You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Express columnist and broadcaster Carole Malone and the editor of the Courier in Dundee, David Clegg. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the Metro says that millions of women could get thousands of pounds compensation after a report found that they weren't properly informed about changes to their state pension. The Eye says the so-called Waspi women are now asking Labour to promise to pay out compensation if they win the next general election. This is the Daily Mirror's take on the story. Pay them what they are owed. Similar sentiments are voiced on the front of the Daily Express. The Mail, however, fears that most of the women will get only about £2,900 and that ministers won't even commit to that. America is toughening its call for a ceasefire in Gaza with a new resolution to the UN Security Council. That's according to The Guardian. The Financial Times reports that the US Justice Department is suing Apple, alleging that the tech giant has attempted to create a monopoly in the mobile sector. The Telegraph leads with official forecasts which suggest that the UK's sickness benefits bill will rise by a third by the end of this decade. While the Times carries news that 1 million more people than 3 years ago now say they're struggling to function because of poor mental health. And the Daily Star carries the apparent threat by a politician in Botswana to send 10,000 elephants to live in Hyde Park. They would find it a bit chilly, I think. A reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Carole Malone and David Clegg. Welcome to both of you.
Hello.
Let us start with the Daily Mail, shall we? The bold headline, new betrayal of Waspi women. Carole, take us into the detail of this story and what's happened today.
This morning when this story broke, it was the Parliamentary Ombudsman had said these Waspi women are owed money. These are the women who were born in the 50s who didn't realise that the pension age was moving from 60 to 65. So when the story first broke, I thought, this is great. They're going to get the compensation now. But the line the Mail is taking is that actually that's probably not going to be the case. They're saying that these women who've asked for £10,000 might probably end up with between 1,000 and 2,950. And I have to say, I've had dealings with the Waspi women over the years. I am one myself. And they are the most tenacious, relentless, incredible group of women you could ever come across because they've been given not a lot of hope over the years that this is ever going to happen. And they've fought on regardless. So I'm thrilled that the Parliamentary Ombudsman has said this today, but the bottom line is the Ombudsman Group can't rule on this. The government, the Department of Work and Pensions, doesn't have to take any notice of their recommendations, and that is going to be the problem. And the DWP have already indicated that they may not pay compensation. And I think this is something, and this is going to be a huge disappointment for these incredible women. I think the Tories will kick the can down the road, thinking that they're going to be kicked out anyway come October, and this will become Labour's problem. And Labour was saying nothing today, and they have said something tonight, and that's on the front of one of the other papers. And they're not committing.
They've said something, but they've not really said anything.
They're not committing. They don't want to pay either. Nobody wants to pay. I mean,
but David, the women have been extremely astute in actually calling on Labour to make a decision and make a promise on this, presuming they come into power. I
think that this is going to become a real political problem in this general election, both for Labour and the Conservatives. I mean, the point about this, this has been a long-running issue. It is successive governments who have failed here. When you have the Ombudsman saying that there's been a government injustice and maladministration, it's clearly a serious issue. It isn't a party political problem because it's been for over such a long period of time that both parties are on the hook for it. So I think what we're faced with now is what could be a bill of up to, it's running into the billions, certainly. The various figures are being bandied around, up to 10.5 billion. at a time of very stretched public finances, that is not something that either party would really relish having to find the cash for. However, given this injustice and the fact in particular, I think that the Conservatives will delay this until after the election. So it will become an election issue. We see on the front page of the Mirror today that they are saying pay them what they are owed, which I think is a sentiment that will be very wildly held throughout the public. Amazed though I was to hear that Carole was a Waspi woman. Who could believe?
Thank you. That's very good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I think that there is going to be a lot of pressure. And these are very astute and determined campaigners. So the issue then for Keir Starmer in particular is how does he play that before the election, given that he is, I think the comment we had from a party spokesman today is they don't want to make unfunded spending commitments, which we've heard over a whole range of issues.
And what they're saying that they need time to reflect on the report. That's been one of their responses as well.
What's tragic here? You know, when I said I'm a Waspi woman, I am. But for me, it didn't affect or harm me because I had no intention of retiring at 60 or 65. I'll keep on going until I get, put out to pasture. But for a lot of these women, they expected to retire at 60 and they felt they'd missed out on opportunities to get their finances in order. And I think that is probably true. And these are the women who deserve the £10,000 each that they're asking for because they lost out. We're going to have to work, and I actually really enjoy what I do. A lot of women wanted to get out of what they were doing. They were tired, they'd had enough. Not every job is as interesting as ours. And these women wanted out of the workplace. And suddenly they're faced with the prospect of 5 more years without their pension. So,
and the point on that, I think, and this idea that the politicians are going to delay this, kick the can down the road as much. There was a startling statistic from one of the campaigners, and I think it was the Mail today, that there's a Waspi woman dying every 13 minutes. Every 13 minutes. So the Ombudsman has said very clearly these people are entitled to compensation. It seems perverse almost that the DWP are just rejecting that out of hand.
But David, the Ombudsman have always...
How can they?
Well, but they can. And the Ombudsman knew this was going to happen to the point where they've actually said they've asked Parliament to intervene. The Ombudsman said today, I haven't got the exact quote, but he said something like he didn't think it was likely that the DWP were going to agree to pay up. So they wanted put to Parliament to do something about it, to take a vote on it. So, but I also think that would be kicked.
Yeah, because the Department for Work and Pensions have indicated that they will refuse to comply.
Yes, yeah. They don't have to by law, Jill. It's not legal. They don't have to. What the Ombudsman does is recommend. He gives a series of recommendations. And you don't have to, they don't have to be followed. But any government that ignores this, whether it be this Tory government or the next Labour government, it's a really bad look for, when these women who have been, they feel they've been done out of money, the rest of the country thinks they've been done out of money, and for a government to just heartlessly ignore that while spending money on other things that people might not deem quite so important, it's going to be a very bad look for Starmer if he doesn't do something.
Well, it's presumably going to be a little while to the election, so there will be time for this to be brought up again and again, and presumably they will have to make some comment, if not commitment. So that's also covered in the Metro. Yeah. And the Eye also, will they have to wait for help from a Labour government, if they will get help from a Labour government. Let's move on to Gaza tonight. And Lord Cameron, decidedly tougher tones we're hearing from him.
Yes, I think there's a story on the front page of the Telegraph. UK to cut off Israel arms supply unless it lets aid into Gaza. And this is a continuation of this sense that Lord Cameron, the Foreign Secretary, is getting more and more frustrated with Israel, especially around this issue of UK-funded aid getting in. And I think this line in the Telegraph would suggest that the patients are wearing thin here. It says, Britain has warned Israel it will cut off arms supplies unless it lets aid into Gaza and sticks to international law. And there's this is Lord Cameron, is understood to have told Israel officials in recent talks that an arms embargo could be declared if Hamas prisoners held in Israel jail are denied access to visits from the Red Cross.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because Cameron today had said that UK aid has been sitting outside Gaza for 3 weeks now, and they're not letting it in. But Downing Street, interestingly, have said tonight that the UK government still believes Israel is acting within international humanitarian law, which seems to be a contradiction. But, you know, what we do know now in Gaza, there are 1.1 million, the worst part is northern Gaza, 1.1 million people. And there's an organisation called the IPC, which is the body that declares what a famine is. They're saying that already 1.1 million people in Gaza are now suffering the effects of famine, and that by May or June this year, because there's 2 million people in Gaza, the rest will also be suffering. And the supreme irony here is that it is now Ramadan in Gaza. This is the time when people fast within daylight hours. Now, a lot of these people have been fasting for 5 months now, and here they are in Ramadan and expected not to eat in daylight hours. But it is shocking, you know. There were 27 people who died in northern Gaza recently. 23 were children, and they died of malnutrition and dehydration. So people are actually, it's not just people getting bombed and killed now. No. They're dying of starvation.
They're in famine.
Yeah.
The Guardian looking at a US call for an immediate ceasefire. So also, as well as Lord Cameron, a very distinct change in stance there from the Americans.
I think that it's interesting reading these two stories side by side and seeing this general sense that both in the US and the UK, two of Israel's staunchest allies from the outside of this conflict, both beginning to lose patience, both changing their language, both changing their rhetoric. And this is a draft UN Security Council resolution where they're calling for immediate ceasefire. So from my understanding, that's that the US position over the time of this conflict has gone from Israel has an absolute right to defend itself to there needs to be a pause to there needs to be a temporary ceasefire, and now it's an immediate ceasefire. And I think that shows again that the Biden administration, similarly to the UK government, its relationship with Israel seems to be fraying in a way that they are becoming concerned. And I think we shouldn't underestimate the importance of domestic pressures, both with big elections coming up in the near future and significant...
But what it also shows, David, is that Israel doesn't care what the US thinks or what we think. I mean, there are meetings in Qatar this week. Israel are having talks in Qatar to try and come to some kind of new arrangement with Hamas and to get, humanitarian aid in and the hostages out. But, the impression you get is that Israel does not want a ceasefire. And I don't blame them for not wanting to go negotiate with Hamas, but something's got to happen soon.
Carole and David, for the moment, thank you. We are going to take a break coming up. Has Apple built a monopoly on smartphones? The US government thinks so. We'll discuss that next. Do stay with us. You are watching the press preview with me, Carole Malone and David Clegg. Let's continue this section by taking a look at the Financial Times and this story, which has been running all day. The fact that the US has accused Apple of acting illegally in terms of ensuring a monopoly to put rivals kind of out of business.
This is the US Department of Justice, and it's the latest in a series of attempts to crack down on the market dominance and the business practices of the big tech companies. And the list of offences that Apple are being accused here of is quite astonishing, really. It's blocking apps, suppressing cloud streaming services, third-party digital services, stuff like digital wallets and giving access to that to competitors. So basically what they're saying is that they have carved out, I think it's 65% market share in the United States, and that they have done that through using a monopoly.
Being smart, isn't it?
That is certainly Apple's. That is certainly Apple's take on it. They've called this case a dangerous precedent if it goes ahead.
Well, it's not that much of a precedent, because years ago, 1998 or something, there was a case exactly the same brought against Microsoft, and Bill Gates lost the case. However, within a few months, it was half of it was taken back, and they did some kind of deal. So there would have been some money deal done. But exactly the same thing happened to Microsoft. But this is just about a company it's got, what did I read? Its GDP is their worth, their trillions of worth, is worth the GDP of 100 countries, which is
it's 97 billion last year.
It was the first. What's a trillion? How many billion is a trillion?
Oh, no.
No, because
a lot. My director says.
In 2018, it became the first trillion-dollar company, and then 2 years later, in 2020, it was a $2 trillion company, which is astonishing.
But the point of the story is that they've maintained this power and this position. The courts are saying not because of their superiority, I think is the quote, but because of its unlawful behaviour.
Well, you see, what Apple are saying is that the facts that the government are using are wrong, and that the law is wrong. And what they're basically saying is, if you try to pin them down, that they're not going to be able to create the kind of successful technologies that Apple has become famous for. And I kind of believe that. That makes sense to me.
My sense is that you talk about it's a monopoly, right? And I can't talk. There's my phone there. I see yours is the same. There's an iPad there. They definitely have a monopoly. They definitely have a monopoly at this table.
Why do we choose them? We choose them because they give us more options than most other phones.
So it's definitely very good. That is one thing. It's a high quality product.
Because all of their products are compatible with each other, so you can't dip in. You're either all in or all out.
And you also know how difficult it would be to change over and import all those things over, all the pictures, all the information you have.
That's good business practice, isn't it, as far as Apple's concerned?
Well, that's what I guess that's what this case is going to decide, whether that's good practice or whether that's exclusionary business practices which are illegal.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? I mean, it's got us talking, and certainly it's going to be a very interesting case.
Every company to make sure that other companies can't compete with them. That's the whole point of your existence as a company, isn't it?
That's what we'll
take down all the other companies around you to do the same as you.
But the point, Carole, is that they say this is not only bad for the competitors, it's also bad for the customer. It's bad for the public because it means that prices can be kept artificially high and that there's not the same choices there would be otherwise.
Okay. Well, as sure as I should have now. You got that look.
No, I would never use that phrase. Let's move on to the Guardian, because I want to get this in. It's very interesting. David, would you ever be a member of an all-male club like the Garrick?
No.
Have you, love, would they?
I don't think... Is there an income requirement? Because I'm sure I would clear that.
I think you've got to be either a government minister or incredibly wealthy or terribly posh and aristocratic.
I'm not meeting any of those categories yet.
But the call now is from a group of lawyers that judges and lawyers shouldn't be members because it's not espousing the core principles of justice, equality and fairness, because women are not allowed.
Are not allowed, yeah. And the thing, I have experience at the Garrick Club. I've actually been thrown out of the Garrick Club because...
badge of honour there.
It's sort of a badge of honour. I mean, I was invited to a dinner there. Women can go in if you're part of a party with a member who's a male. Anyway, they tried to throw me out. They couldn't, obviously. And it all was a bit...
Obviously, she said.
Well, they couldn't, because I just said to the guy, what are you going to do? Are you going to manhandle me out? He said, well, no. I said, well, I'm not going, because it was raining outside. I wasn't going to wear... Anyway, long story short, I think men should be able to have their clubs, because I can't imagine anything more boring than actually spending a night full of men. And he's the same. You said I wouldn't go because there's no women. You actually said that. Why
be careful what you say to Carole in the break.
Carole will quote that back while your wife is watching.
We must leave. Carole and David, thank you very much.